10 minutes before my daughter walked down the aisle, I heard her fiancé laughing behind a half-closed door. He wasn't nervous. He was planning how to marry her, divorce her, and take half of everything she owned. At 72 years old, I had a choice. Stay silent and let her future collapse slowly. Or stop the wedding and shatter her heart to save her life. What I did next changed everything. Welcome to my YouTube channel Moral Ecos, where silence speaks. I heard my son-in-law's betrayal minutes before the wedding. What I did next made him regret it. My name is Robert Whitmore. I am 72 years old and I have lived long enough to know that evil rarely announces itself with thunder. It arrives smiling, well-dressed, polite. And sometimes it waits at the altar. The morning of my daughter's wedding was bright, golden, and deceptively peaceful. Birds rested on the white arches in the garden of St. Matthew's Church. The scent of roses drifted through the air. Guests were dressed in silk and linen, laughter rising in soft waves across the lawn. Everything looked perfect. But I have learned something in my 72 years. Perfection can be a disguise. That was the day I heard my future son-in-law planning to betray my daughter. And that was the day I chose to become the villain in his story, so my daughter would not become the victim in his. The girl I promised to protect. Emily is my only child. She is 34 years old now, but when I look at her, I still see the 12-year-old girl who clung to my coat at her mother's funeral. "Daddy," she had whispered through tears, "you won't leave me too, right?" I knelt down in that cold cemetery and promised her something no man can fully control. I will always protect you. I failed at many things in life. I worked too much after her mother passed. I burned dinners. I forgot school forms, but I never failed at loving her. She grew into a woman with a heart too generous for this world. She believed in second chances. She forgave easily. She saw the good in people even when it wasn't there. That was her beauty. And her danger. Daniel, the perfect illusion. When she introduced me to Daniel 3 years ago, he was everything a father is supposed to approve of. 38, confident, successful in real estate, polished, respectful. He brought wine the first time he came to dinner, complimented my cooking even though I had overcooked the roast, asked about my late wife and listened carefully to the answer. He shook my hand firmly. "Sir," he said, "I love your daughter. I want to build a life with her." He said all the right things. And yet, there was something rehearsed about him, like an actor who knew his lines perfectly but didn't feel them. I ignored it, because Emily looked happy. The house. 2 years before the wedding, I transferred ownership of my house to Emily. It was my wife's wish before she passed, that our home would always belong to our daughter. The property had increased in value over the years, nearly $2 million now. When Emily told Daniel about it, I noticed something flicker across his face. Not gratitude. Calculation. It was gone in a second. But I saw it. And I wish I had trusted that instinct sooner. 10 minutes before the wedding. The string quartet had begun tuning their instruments. Guests were being seated. The sky was flawless blue. I stepped away from the bridal suite to steady my nerves. Walking Emily down the aisle felt like releasing the last piece of her childhood. As I turned the corner near the storage room by the garden exit, I heard voices. Daniel's voice. Relaxed, careless. "I told you," he laughed, "it's simple. Once we're married, everything is shared. The house alone is worth a fortune." Another man's voice responded lower. "So you actually love her, or?" Daniel scoffed. "She's sweet, predictable, easy. Her father adores her. She trusts me completely. I give it 2 years, divorce. I walk away with half clean." My stomach dropped. "And Claire?" the other man asked. A pause. "That's different. Claire's fun. This is strategy." Strategy. My daughter was a strategy. I felt something inside me crack, not loudly but deeply. At 72 years old, your heart doesn't break with noise. It fractures in silence. The battle in my chest. I stood frozen. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it was a cruel joke. Maybe confronting him would humiliate Emily on the happiest day of her life. But then I imagined 2 years from now. Emily sitting across from me at the kitchen table, papers in hand, eyes red from crying. Dad, he took half. And I would know I could have stopped it. Silence would make me complicit. I thought of that promise at the cemetery. I turned and walked toward the bridal suite, telling her. When I opened the door, she was standing in front of the mirror. She looked radiant, lace hugging her shoulders, her mother's pearl earrings catching the light. Dad, she smiled, it's almost time. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Emily, I said quietly, we need to talk. The joy on her face shifted to concern. I told her everything, every word, every laugh, every mention of Claire. At first she shook her head. No, he wouldn't. Her voice trembled. He cried when he proposed. He said I was his forever. Sometimes, I said gently, people cry because they're acting. That was the cruelest sentence I've ever spoken. Tears filled her eyes. I love him, she whispered. I know. And if you're wrong. I looked at her. Then you'll hate me for a while, but you'll still be safe. That was the moment she became stronger than I ever knew. She wiped her tears. Stay with me, she said. Always. The public reckoning. The music began. Guests rose. Instead of walking down the aisle with her arm in mine, Emily stepped forward alone and took the microphone from the officiant. Daniel smiled nervously. Em, what are you doing? She looked breathtaking and broken all at once. Before I marry you, she said clearly, I need you to answer one question. Silence spread across the garden. Who is Claire? The color drained from his face. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. And how long were you planning to wait before divorcing me and taking half my house? A collective murmur erupted. Daniel looked at me then, and he knew. I heard you, I said calmly. His charm evaporated. It was a joke, he insisted. Emily removed her ring slowly. You don't joke about destroying someone's life. She placed the ring in his shaking hand. I won't be your investment. And she walked away. I followed. Behind us, the illusion collapsed. The drive home. Her wedding dress filled the passenger seat like a cloud that had fallen from the sky. Halfway home, she broke. I feel stupid, she sobbed. I pulled over and held her. Loving someone is never stupidity, I said, but trusting the wrong person is a lesson. She cried until there were no tears left. And then she grew quiet. There is something powerful about surviving public humiliation. It burns away illusions fast. Daniel's desperation. 3 days later, he showed up at my door. You destroyed my life, he accused. No, I replied evenly. You tried to destroy hers. He threatened lawsuits over wedding expenses. Reputation damage, defamation. At 72, fear doesn't grip you the way it used to. I will testify under oath to what I heard, I said, and if necessary, I will ensure every business partner you have hears it too. He left. Within months, whispers followed him. Real estate is built on trust. Once that cracks, everything does. Claire disappeared. So did his confidence. Regret is loud when reputation fades. The slow healing. Emily moved back home for a while. At night, we talked about red flags she ignored. How he rushed the engagement. How he discouraged her from signing a prenuptial agreement. How he mocked her independence as cute. Healing is not dramatic, it is quiet. She started therapy, took up painting again, laughed slowly at first, then freely. One evening, months later, she sat across from me at the kitchen table. "You saved me," she said. "No," I replied. "You saved yourself, I just told you the truth." She squeezed my hand. "Thank you for choosing the hard moment." 1 year later, exactly 1 year after the canceled wedding, Emily hosted a small dinner in the same garden. No white dress, no grand speeches, just friends, laughter, peace. She had met someone new, not flashy, not dramatic, a schoolteacher named Michael, gentle, steady, transparent. He asked me for nothing except advice on how to make her smile. And that told me everything. When I shook his hand, I didn't feel calculation. I felt sincerity. At 72, you learn the difference. What I learned that day taught me something powerful. Love without integrity is manipulation. Charm without character is performance. And silence in the face of betrayal is cowardice. I could have chosen comfort. I could have walked her down that aisle and pretended ignorance. But real love is not about avoiding conflict. It is about protecting someone, even if they misunderstand you in the moment. The moral: if you ever hear the truth before someone you love does, you have a choice. Protect peace temporarily, or protect them permanently. Temporary embarrassment fades. Public humiliation heals. Broken trust inside a marriage can destroy decades. I am Robert Whitmore. I am 72 years old. I stopped my daughter's wedding minutes before she said, "I do." And I would do it again without hesitation. Because sometimes being a good father doesn't mean giving your daughter away. Sometimes it means standing beside her while she walks away from the wrong man. And that, no matter how painful, is the purest form of love.